It's Mel. It is January 29th, and before January is over, I wanted to talk about where I'm at with my Read What You Own challenge. The Read What You Own challenge is a challenge that Criminali created, but it's been done before. Like, people read what they own, and there's a lot of people reading their entire physical TBRs, and there's a lot of people reading down their TBR or reading all of their TBR. But Criminali's version started with a 100-book challenge, so he was going to read 100 books before he bought any new books, and then that turned into the Read What You Own challenge, and it's been happening for quite a while, and I've been participating in it for the last few years. I have not succeeded at it. Most of the years that I've done it, I've only succeeded at it one time, which I believe was last year in 2024-5. So the end of 2024, the beginning of 2025. Criminali puts on this challenge every year, starting around the beginning of November this year. It was, or last year in 2025, it started on November 5th. Remember the 5th of November. It makes it easy to remember when the challenge starts. And there's different levels and there's different tiers. So you can commit to reading 10 books before you buy something new, 20 books, 25, 50, 75, 100, or as many as you want, maybe all of your physical TBR before you buy new books. And you can add any sort of caveats, so maybe books that are gifted to you, because it does fall around a time when people give holiday gifts, or books that you're sent by publishers, things like that. So you can make all sorts of caveats. Now, before we go on and talk about my version of the Read What You Own, and before we talk about where I'm at with the Read What You Own, I wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening in the world right now. Obviously, horrible things are happening, and 2025 was a very hard year, a year that we knew was going to be difficult and was going to see injustices and was going to see immorality in the world. And in 2026, just the 4 weeks of 2026, the 29 days of 2026, we've seen an excessive ramp up of that. And it's very hard to catch one's breath, and it's very hard to sleep. I didn't sleep at all last night. I haven't slept well. I mean, I haven't slept well in many years, but I haven't slept well this year at all, and I find myself oscillating between looking at what's happening and trying to witness what's happening and trying to be informed and stay informed, and then, not wanting to see that and trying to kind of hide away a little bit, or at least hide away enough to manage to stay sane and to manage to not fall apart. I think it's a very easy time right now that we could be falling apart, that we could be burying our heads in the sand and trying not to think about anything, but unfortunately we can't do that. Even if you wanted to, you can't, because you're faced with the reality of the fascism in our country every day. And I've seen quite a few things saying that we've always been fascist, and that's a conversation for another day, but I think the turn that we've taken towards white supremacy in America is very stark and very apparent, and the racism and execution of people trying to fight against that racism has become very apparent, obviously. So, it's hard to reconcile doing things like a Read What You Own challenge. It's hard to reconcile getting up and going to work every morning. It's hard to reconcile getting out of bed with what's going on in the world, and the helplessness and the powerlessness that I feel, and that I'm sure a lot of you feel, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. I am sure that a lot of you can relate to the hopelessness that we are feeling and to the inconsequential nature of things like BookTube, and I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't feel that way. I'm not going to tell you that you should wholly enjoy BookTube and you should compartmentalize your feelings. I think there is and has to be room for both, just like there has to be room for grief and for joy. It's very easy to feel that you don't deserve joy right now, that we don't deserve joy right now, that we don't deserve distraction, that we don't deserve mundanity and calmness, and I definitely struggle with that, and I'm sure a lot of you struggle with it too. So I'm not going to tell you it's fine, and you shouldn't feel that way, and you should be able to enjoy everything you want to enjoy. And I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't enjoy things, and that you shouldn't be watching BookTube, and that you shouldn't be reading, and that you shouldn't be doing the things that make your life better, because you should be doing those things too. It's just a balance and a dichotomy that we're going to have to live with, and we're going to have to face. I don't know how else to help the world. Like, I don't know how to help the world, full stop. Like, I don't know how to do it. So I'm not saying that you should know or you should figure it out. And I'm not saying that you should give up helping the world. I'm going to keep searching for a way to help the world. I'm going to keep trying. But I'm also going to talk about books. And I'm also going to talk about my Read What You Own project. The gist of it is that you're not alone, I'm not alone, we're in it together, and we can continue to do both. Mourn and enjoy life, grieve and enjoy life, fight and enjoy life, and we can continue to try to read down our TBRs. My Read What You Own challenge started a little bit later than Criminali's challenge started because I knew there were a couple of book sales that I wanted to go to, and if you know me, you know that I love to go to community book sales, to library book sales. So I wanted to go to a couple of those first. So I started my challenge on November 22nd, 2025. My caveats were that there was a book sale in December that I wanted to go to, so I decided that I would go to it, but none of the books that I bought would count towards the challenge in 2025. So if I went to the book sale, bought books, and read them right away, they wouldn't count towards my Read What You Own. Any other books on my TBR would count towards my Read What You Own challenge. Any books that I read that were not on my TBR, like books that I borrowed from the library, like audiobooks that I borrowed, would not count towards my Read What You Own challenge. And then the whole goal was, besides that one book sale, to not acquire any other books. I don't buy new books, so the only way that I acquire books are little free libraries, used book sales, or used book stores. And I've been good about not going to used book stores for the most part. My challenge was going to run from November 22nd until March 1st, or I read 50 books, or March 6th, which is the date of a book sale that I want to go to. So there are other book sales. There have been other book sales in December and in January, and there will be in February that I want to go to, but I am not going to go to those, and I'm going to wait until that book sale on March 6th. Hopefully I will have read 50 books by then. Within my challenge, if I do happen to pick up a book, if I do happen to buy a book from a thrift store, from a used bookstore, or if I get one from a little free library or anything like that, it will add a book to my challenge. So if I pick up a book that goes onto my TBR, it'll add a book to the 50 books, which has happened. And then if I pick up a book that's like a vintage book, like for my Agatha Christie collection, it's not going to count because those don't really go on my TBR in the same way. They all end up on my red shelf, and they're not as pressing for me to get to. They're something that I want to collect, and I want to have lots of vintage Agatha Christie books and Mary Robert Reinhardt books, so they don't count against my challenge. And then I also decided I don't get a lot of Christmas gifts in general, but if I got books for Christmas, they also wouldn't count against my challenge. They would just go onto the TBR. So now that we are quite a few, well, let's see, 2 full months into the Read What You Own challenge, I have completed 30 books. So I have read 30 books towards this challenge, but my challenge is no longer 50 books. It is 54 books because I did pick up 4 books over the course of the last 2 months. The first book that I acquired didn't count towards the challenge. It was The Halloween Party by Agatha Christie, so it was a vintage Agatha Christie. It didn't count against the challenge. The next book did count against the challenge, By Any Means Necessary by Malcolm X, and it's a collection of his speeches, and it was at the Salvation Army for like 50 cents, and I just really wanted to get it. It's a great vintage copy. Even though it is vintage and even though I love Malcolm X, I counted this against the challenge because it is going to go on my TBR. It is something I actively want to read. Next, I did acquire Baldwin, A Love Story, which my dad got me for Christmas. Doesn't count against the challenge, does go on my TBR. I then got RWYO by Nindis Mina, which is a historical fiction novella that I've heard a lot of really great things about. It's kind of a mystery, and I really wanted to read it. I think it's set in Scotland, so that does count against the challenge. That added the second book to my 50 books. So acquiring that one book means I have to read another book for the challenge. Then I acquired The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. This is a book that I've already read, and my copy is falling apart, so I acquired another vintage copy from a little free library. Does not count against the challenge. Next, I acquired To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. Okay, this is a gray area, and this is where, like, you know, that meme gets inserted, the rules don't apply, because technically this does go on my TBR. Technically this is something I've been keeping my eye out for and I want to read ever since reading Mrs. Dalloway, but it's also a vintage copy, and it was kind of a get it now or don't get it kind of situation. I found it in a little free library, so although this technically is a newly acquired book, I am not counting it against the challenge. But the next book that I did also acquire from a little free library is Women's Hotel by Daniel M. Lavari, and this does count against the challenge. This is an ARC I found in a little free library, and I had seen a finished copy of this, and I really kicked myself that I didn't pick it up. Like 2 summers ago I saw it, and I was like, oh, that book looks so cool, but I'd never heard of it. I don't know what it's about, and of course it's like queer, and it's set in an apartment building, and like all things that are right up my alley, and ever since not getting it, I've been kicking myself for not getting it. So I did acquire that book, and it does count against the challenge, making my total number of books that I need to read 53. Again, another The Rules Don't Apply book. I picked up My Gorgeous Life by Dame Edna, which is a mock autobiography of Dame Edna. I don't think it's an autobiography of the man behind Dame Edna. I think it's just Dame Edna's life. So it's not really an autobiography, but it kind of is. And this is a vintage copy. I got this at the Restore, and I just needed to have it. And even though it's going on the TBR, I'm not counting it against the challenge. But that same day, I also got Black Girl Call Home, which is a collection of poems by Jasmine Mans. And this I am counting against the challenge. These are 25 cents each. So, you know, not a huge expense, not a huge burden to have on my TBR. A collection of poetry definitely isn't, and a vintage book definitely isn't. But Black Girl Call Home does count against the challenge. So that brings my total of books that I need to read to 54. And like I said, I've already read 30, so I have 24 books left to go. I mentioned before, it is January 29th. So I have a couple more days in January. I have all of February to read those 24 books. And then potentially I have a few days in March as well before we get to that book sale. So I don't know if I can do it. I'm hoping I can do it. I have already read 18 books in January, and I'm set to at least finish another one before January is out. It's definitely doable. I could do it. I could do it. What do I have? 28, 29, 30, 31, plus 6, 37 days. So I think I can do it. And I could also always deliberately choose short or quick books off of my TBR to read to accomplish this. I haven't really been doing that. And in fact, I've actually read some books that don't qualify for the challenge at all. So the first book that I read that doesn't qualify for the challenge is I reread Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut at the beginning of the year. I've been wanting to reread this one for a long time, so I'm glad that I finally picked it up. This doesn't count toward the challenge because it's a reread, because it's not on my TBR, because it came from my Kurt Vonnegut collection. But what a fantastic book. I haven't read it in many years. I've read it a couple of times, but it's been a long time since I last read it, and it's so great. And everyone should read it. Better than I remembered, for sure. Next, another book that I read that doesn't count is Never Whistle at Night by various Indigenous authors. This is an anthology of Indigenous horror stories that I started way back in the end of November to complete the buzzword reading challenge. My last prompt that I hadn't completed was a book with the word never in the title. So I decided to read that one. It was an unowned audiobook for me, so it doesn't count towards the challenge. And then also, along the same lines, I read Through the Gates of Garnet and Gold by Shauna Maguire, which is the 11th in the Wayward Children series, which is a series that I love and I read every year as soon as it comes out, or as close to when it comes out as I can. So I got that one on audio from the library as well. So those are 3 books that I've read during the time of the challenge that don't count towards the challenge. I also decided once 2026 rolled around that I was going to be able to read those books from that last book sale in 2025. So at the Wall Library sale in December of 2025, I purchased 15 books, and I decided that I could go ahead and read them now and they would count towards the challenge. I just didn't want to count it too close, but after a month, they're like on my TBR, so does it really matter? So far I think I'm doing pretty good. I think I am on track to complete this challenge, which, like I said, I've only done once before, and I'm enjoying myself and I'm liking shopping my shelves. The whole point of this challenge is to shop your shelves. The whole point of it is to get excited about the books that are on your shelves. And I'm never not excited about the books that are on my shelves, but because I love to save books, because I love to go to used book sales, and because I acquire quite a few books every time I go there, I do tend to get excited about shiny new books, you know, even though they're not actually new, even though they're not technically new, they're new to me, and I get excited about them, and I tend to read more of those. I keep a spreadsheet, a RAB spreadsheet, my recently acquired book spreadsheet, and you can see that every year I read more off of the current year and the previous year than the other years. So I'm working on some projects to help me get through those older books, the oldest books on my TBR, but the Read What You Own challenge definitely helps with that because I do have to shop my shelves, and because I'm a mood reader, I do have to kind of dig deep and search for the books that I want. The only thing that I think I'm going to do differently next year is that I definitely am feeling that I'm missing out on all the books that, like, in January, right after Christmas, people get rid of into free little libraries or get rid of into used book stores. So, like, there is, I've noticed, a surge of books that come into little free libraries right after December. People are cleaning things out. They're getting rid of old books to make room for new books. They're getting rid of books that they got for Christmas that they don't want. They're making room for, like, the new year and doing new year cleaning. So I do feel like every year it's been a little bit of a struggle, and I've had to not do something which is really fun, which is kind of shop little free libraries and used bookstores for all those books, and thrift stores for all those books that people are getting rid of. So I think next year I'm going to start this project earlier, and I'm going to allow a caveat like for that. Even though I'm still working on it in 2026, maybe I'll start it in like September of 2026, and then I'll be able to finish it, complete the challenge before January, and then I'll be able to shop all the little free libraries and go to find the books that people are discarding in thrift stores and things like that. So let me know if you're participating in the Read What You Own challenge. Let me know if you have been doing well, if you have not been doing well. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned here and what you thought of them. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!